Hey, good morning, everybody. It's a rainy August 13th here where I am located, and I am that developer dad. And I am building a handy dandy little application that, let's see, nope. Hey, good morning, Cyrenex. I'm trying to remember the Nightbot bang commands. Here we go. I found them. So I'm building a handy dandy little application that is going to help me at my D&D table when my characters ask me questions about the various NPCs and townsfolk and stuff that they meet. Good morning, Mr. Cyrenex. Cyrenex hosts a podcast and stream called Part Time Gamers that my wife is a part of, and it's quite entertaining. He introduced us to this Golf with Friends thing in September, and I played it last night. And boy, howdy, it's some silly fun. Hey, what's up, Jeff is a Geek? Howdy. So what I'm building here, actually, I'll just do this. Bang, project. Bam. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to flip over to my screen share here. Boop. And yesterday, I got my NPCs saving to a database. And I started pulling them back towards the user interface. And I realized that, oh crap, there's no name or anything like that on there. So if we filter for all the gnome tinkers, all we're going to see is a list of gnome tinker, gnome tinker, gnome tinker all the way down the screen. And that's not actually very helpful at all. Hey, thanks for stopping by, Sean. Yeah, Twitch can be choppy on the phone, but it's the stuff that it's the hand that we're dealt, isn't it? So I added a column to the NPCs table to store our character's name or our character's names along with their species and profession. So that'll help on the display. I altered the way the townsperson object is being converted into a NPC storage thingy, and now I'm working on bringing things back. So what I need to do here, because I do want to filter these things, is I'm going to need to first off add a new contract, add a couple of new contracts actually, and we're going to add a class called filtered NPC, not filterez, but filtered NPC. And dang blast it, didn't I mistype it? So let's fix this. Rename. To filtered. Here we go. And I'm going to have Streamlabs in the background so that I've got this in the foreground, actual Twitch. Okay. And 9 of 12 had told me that my Linktree link isn't working yesterday or the other day, and I fixed it. So it seems to be working okay now. So good. And I gotta come over here and change this. And just to be on the safe side, let's go down to the File Explorer, because Visual Studio, when you fix the case on a class name, it doesn't always change the case on the file name. And I build in a Unix system, And it gets really, really, really cranky when the cases don't match exactly. So, fun stuff. Filtered NPC. And this guy represents one NPC that matches the user provided filter criteria. Save. I'm not going to add anything to this yet. And I'm feeling silly. Oh, so very silly. I don't need the access model. I don't need the INPC access. I will want that. I will want this. And I won't want that. So instead of classes for these, because like I said, I'm feeling silly. This is the filter result. Let's turn this into a record. And we're going to turn this into a record. And I was meditating on adding the fancier IN collection filter thing that I've built in the past. And it's horribly complicated and a lot of heavy lifting for what should be a simple operation. I'm not going to add a user identifier to that until I've got user tracking in place. So filtered NPC is now a record, and public string name works. Prop int ID NPC ID. Oh gosh, I'm on a Mac and I keep trying to do like the Windows left to get me all the way to the end of the line, and it messes with me every time. Prop string species, prop string location, CTOR is gonna be int NPC ID string name string species string vocation with one C, and NPC ID equals that name species vocation equals vocation. Save. Now, I remember hearing somewhere that records are more memory efficient or more easily comparable than classes. And I want to verify that. So, I'm going to ask my friend, Microsoft Copilot. And go away. Stop that. You know, it's so nice to open Microsoft Edge and get the MSN homepage and stuff come up, and not see that guy all over the homepage. I don't like to get political, but I was just getting really sick of seeing that guy that owns the hotels and casinos. I don't like the way he carries himself. All right, so in C#, what is the difference between a class and a record, and why would I choose a record type instead of a class? I've been aware of records for years, and I've not gotten into the habit of using them. Blah, 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 non-destructive mutation, boogie, boogie, boo. Records compile into classes, but their immutability and data-centric focus can make them a great choice for scenarios where you need to represent structured data. Okay, that's the TLDR. I wish it had led with that. Oh, that's neat. Okay, so these are immutable data structures, and I've always been looking for those, and I wish I had started practicing with records a long, long time ago. Records. Consider two records equal if their data is the same. Okay. If two class instances have identical data, they are not necessarily equal unless explicitly defined. Okay. Use a record when an object's sole purpose is to contain public data, DTOs, and data models. If your object is unique. Okay. See, in the olden days, we only had classes. And then when they introduced records for immutability and so on and so forth, they're a lot friendlier for functional style programming. Your state cannot be modified. If you need to change data, create a new record based on an existing one. Oh, that's lovely. Excuse me. So, pardon me, goodness. Are there resource implications for using records instead of classes? Are there efficiency implications? Okay, so records have slightly higher memory overhead due to their additional features like quality checks and non-destructive mutation. Small data structures, this difference is negligible. Listen, I'm not writing this to run on a watch or somebody's graphing calculator. So I'm not going to worry about slightly higher memory overhead. Excuse me. It's generally comparable to classes. Large collections of records consider the overhead of a quality check since records compare by value. I'm not going to be doing comparisons typically. Okay. Use records for data-centric, classes for behavior-centric. I think this has largely been introduced for structural reasons, is my guess. Clarity, maintainability, and correctness over minor performance differences. Okay. So it's pretty much a style thing where records, if it's going to be read-only data, let's use a record. If we have to manipulate the data or do stuff with it, then we need a class. So in this case, in the case of this application, a townsperson, this is an NPC that we are building, and we're constantly manipulating its attributes. So we're going to want to stick with a class on this. But for a list of things that's going to get rendered out to a screen, then in that case, we want a record. And that means our NPC filter, well, once it's been submitted, we want it to be a record. But while we're creating it, we want it to be a class. So, I made the right call here on doing NPC filter like this as a record inside our actual system code. out in the UI, we're going to build it as a class, and then we're going to convert it to this NPC filter before we push it into the API. Or maybe we'll do that at the API level. I'm not sure yet. Okay, so we've got our NPC filter. We need to define, we've got our filtered NPC as well, which is absolutely going to be a record. Oh, wait, NPC filter is for the access level. Let's add a new item, and it's going to be a record. We'll just start it as a class. Townsperson filter. Boop. This is going to be a public class. Nope. Rob. Head out of butt. Public record. And prop nullable string. Species. And another prop with a nullable string for their vocation. Those are the only two things that we are going to filter on for now. But by collapsing all of our possible filter parameters into a class or a record, it means we don't end up with get by name, get by species, get by vocation, get by name and species, get by name and species and vocation, get by name and vocation, and all of those things, and we don't end up with an API that's 6 miles long. Because if we want to filter our townspeople, we just have this object here, this filter, and we can set or not set as we wish which attributes we want to filter or we want to match on. So species, vocation, okay. And when we're looking for a particular townsperson while we're running our table, we're not going to be doing crazy Boolean searches where we say, find me all the townspeople who are blacksmiths and whose name contains Jerry. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to be looking for blacksmiths, maybe of a certain species. And right now, this system is just going to be doing NPCs, but eventually we might start generating the shop or the tavern or the smithy or the scriptorium or library or whatever they work in, and we'll be able to associate their professional location with the NPC. And maybe eventually we'll be able to associate those locations and the NPCs with the towns in which they live that we actually create some details for, and so on. But right now, our first kick at this can is just the NPCs. So we've got our townsperson filter, it's all ready. Let's save. And I need to modify my TownfolkManager contract. I should really just get rid of these obsoletes. No, I'm not going to do that while I'm doing something else. That's crazy. And the reason it's a bad idea is that if I start changing things that aren't relevant to the task at hand, and I goof something up somewhere, and then I commit, then those extra changes that I made where I'm Boy Scouting make it into the commit, and it can really cause problems at merge time if there are defects in the fixes I make. So an array of townsperson, list of townspersons, this is not what we're going to be returning from here. We're going to be returning a task because we want this to be asynchronous, and the task is going to return an operation result of filtered NPCs, and it's going to return an IEnumerable of those. And I used to be in the habit of just turning those into arrays. And I feel like I really ought to just do that. Nah. And I'm going to change list townspersons, rename to filter townspeople. And we're going to accept a townsperson filter of type filter, or called filter. Now I need to come back out to my TownfolkManager, and list townspersons no longer exists. I need to grab this whole line, copy it, overwrite this, and that should shut the compiler up, because I saw the little red dot up here that said we don't implement the interface. So let us, first thing we're going to do is op result enumerable of filtered NPC. Yeah. Manager result equals new op result filtered NPC. Okay. And manager payload equals a new list of, I'm going to go back to the start, list of filtered NPC. Manager payload equals a new list of filtered NPC. And what I'm doing there drives some programmers crazy, but my thinking is, if I know the type of a variable that I am declaring as I'm declaring it, why the heck would I use var? Just use the type, and I find it to be considerably more readable. Now, because this is now a fairly long string, or a fairly long line of code, I can pass in my manager payload that I've initialized. And there we go. Good. And now I can return manager result. It doesn't like that, and it's going to like it even less in a second. Okay, we're good now. So now we need to add the filter parameter to the interface and pass it through to the access component. All right, so we've got our filter up top side here. Do I want to be a real weirdo? No, I don't. I am going to put that up on the same line here. Now, step one. Step one. And I'm going to be deleting these comments in a minute. I'm just writing them out now so that I can keep my head aligned here. Convert the incoming filter object to the access components filter type. Step 2, call and await the return from the access component. Step 3, map the results from the access component to the local idiom. Step 4, send it back to the caller. Save. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is convert our incoming filter into the NPC access or the NPC filter. I'm going to come up here. Where's my resource access? And I know a lot of people don't like naming classes similarly all the time. But this gives me the ability with a glance to know exactly where one of these classes is coming from or going to. So we're going to save everything, come back to our TownfolkManager, and NPC access filter equals filter dot to access filter. Boom. Save. Now, I need to go into my internal operations, and I've got a model transformers class already. And public static NPC access filter to access filter to NPC access filter. This townsperson filter var model, return model, and because it's a record, I better create a constructor. Species, string nullable, location, save, model equals new NPC access filter. Where's the syntax for constructing a new record? Now, is this a record of the same type, or is it something different? Come on. Here we are, new window, size 10. Okay, so you got to use the implicit constructors. That's fine. And that's not what I'm doing here. I'm mapping from type to type, not instance to instance. Equals filter dot species. Let's clean that up a bit. Vocation equals filter.vocation. Go to definition. Get rid of that. Save. Back to model transformers. Save everything. What are you complaining about? Nothing. Good. And then we're going to need another extension method. Public static filtered NPC to manager model. This, and it's going to be, what's it called? Not NPC access filter, but NPC access filter result. NPC access filter result. And access model. To manager model. I don't hate it. Var manager model equals new filtered NPC. Do things. Turn MGR model. Boop. And I think I've got mandatory crap in my constructor, which I don't actually need and shouldn't actually have. Excuse me. Yeah, I kind of do, because this is different. Save. ID, nope. NPC. ID, nope. Oh, come on, Rob. Head and butt. NPC ID. NPC ID gets access model dot ID. Name gets access model dot name. Species gets access model dot species. Location gets access model dot location. Boop. And that's it. Now, something I do want to do, even though technically it's a record, and these are unchangeable after setting them. Init. And what this does is lets us either set these properties from inside the constructor, or it allows the property values to be set during deserialization, which isn't important right now, but it might become important later. Hey, Rev, what's happening, man? As a matter of fact, it will become important later. We just haven't gotten there yet, and we're not going to get there anytime soon, but we're going to get there. Hello, I can use casual greeting. It's super effective. Oh, yes. Haha. I'm old. I was an adult when Pokemon happened. I was like in my 20s when Pokemon started. And yeah. So, TownfolkManager got two access filter, and that's not what I called it. Two manager model. Oh, wait. And NPC access filter. NPC access filter. There we go. Now, var access result equals NPC access dot filter NPCs with my access filter and that returns a task, so we need to await it. And you see, var, Rob, when you wrote this code up here, didn't you bark and curse and swear about using var? I said, when we know and can guarantee the type of the variable that we're declaring, then we should absolutely use it when we're declaring that variable. However, when we're calling out to another component, we can't always guarantee that we're going to get back the exact type that we specify here. So what we do here is we use var. And then, of course, after it comes back, we can interrogate it and do some stuff. So now we need to pull it apart. And if access result is not equal to null, and also access result dot was successful. Else. So if our access result is null, if now string error message, I'm just going to call it error mess because that's funny. To do, this ain't right, Bobby. Best make this right later. I just want to get this written. Equals access result errors. Nope. Oh, come on. Silly head. Access result dot errors 0. Oh, wait. Dot first or default cannot implicitly convert KVP to bool. That's fine. If it's null, actually null coalesce value, else something really unexpected happened. Let's put the semicolon on the outside. And what's this barking about? Okay, there we go. First or default value. If that result, if all of that is null, then something really unexpected happened. Manager result dot add error. This is not at all what I need to do here. Okay. Lol, lol, lol. Else, if access result errors dot errors dot any false, then manager result dot add error GUID dot new GUID something very bad happened. Else access result dot errors dot get key. Is there a get keys? I figured there would be a get keys. Dot errors dot keys dot each. Fine. Manager result dot add error item dot key item dot value block. One of these days I'll pull my head out of my butt because it's in there, let me tell you. Wait. So if access result is not null, we fall in here. Otherwise, if it is null or failed, then if it's null, we say something really, really bad happened. And I don't even need to, that's silly. If access result is null, something very bad happened. Otherwise, we can do that. We don't have any possible null violations. Okay, that's better. I was getting way too cute. Rename. There we go. Friendlier variable names. And var filtered NPCs equals access result dot payload. For each var NPC in filtered NPCs, manager result. No. I was about to do a thing that a lot of people do, and I don't like it. Var mgr result equals npc dot to manager model manager result dot payload dot add. No. mgr payload. No. Come on, Rob. Manager payload. Manager payload dot add manager result. And we're good. Can I do list dot empty? Nope. But I can do, if filtered NPCs is null, array dot empty of NPC access filter. And I have to spell it right. And I have to invoke the array.empty method. So that's an IEnumerable. And I can't do that there. So I have to do it up here. It still doesn't like it. So the payload is an IEnumerable NPC access filter result, you goof. You silly, silly goof. Oh, I've been having these guys for a while. Okay, let's clicky click there. And where is the whack action? I think this is the whack action. Goodbye. Haha. Okay, so Rev, I've started opening Twitch in an actual browser in addition to over in Streamlabs, because the chat experience in Streamlabs is great for monitoring, not so great for actually interacting with the chat at all. It's kind of awful. Okay, so we've just spent a whole lot of time writing a whole lot of code to just implement one single method. But, and it's also not particularly neat and tidy code either. I don't particularly enjoy this method one little bit. But it's fine. We don't need these comments. And okay. Yeah. Okay. So now our next stop, we're about done with the manager for this piece. So we can fall back to our API. And we'll start with the contract. Get NPC options, generate NPC, generate NPC, generate NPC, get NPC JSON, describe, generate attributes. This really has no rhyme or reason to how it's laid out, is it? Here's save NPC. We're going to get a task op result I enumerable of filtered NPC. Is that what I called it? Filter townsfolk. And it's going to take a townsperson filter. I got to go back to my TownfolkManager and see if that's what I actually called that. Yeah, filtered NPC. And I'm going to rename this to filtered townsperson. Yes, change all references. That's more like it. And it's not going to be that generic. We're just getting a task of stuff. Now we got to come into character workloads, and because this is an API, we don't tend to have a ton of logic in here. Like most of this stuff is purely passed through. As you can see as I scroll through this, there's something. Generate NPC. Okay, I believe this is the obsolete version. Oh yeah, that's the obsolete version. Where's describe? Describe gets a little hairy. Yeah. So we've got all this stuff in here, but most of this is brokering out to other components and then mapping the results. And that's really it. Function result is that. AI function result. I created the AI function result before I created op result in my low-level framework project. All right, we need to add the filter NPCs. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab this whole line, except the semicolon. We're going to copy that and make a public, paste, brackets, filter townsfolk, and I need to actually var API result equals NPC manager dot filter townspeople, pass the filter, and that needs to be in await, and this needs to be async, and up here I need to return it. And this is all the stuff. If I were publishing an API, I'd commit, save, publish, off it goes. I'd increment the minor version number because we just added an optional feature, and call this a session. if this were an API, I'd be able to spin up the API project and hit this through Swagger or Postman. Although I'm not using Postman because it's not free anymore. There's another one I picked up. Bruno? Is it Bruno? Yeah. Bruno is like a freeware open source version of Postman that somebody put out. And it takes a little bit of getting used to, but I quite like it. But I am not planning to build this as a microservices distributed application yet. This is going to be what I call a well-factored monolith, where it's got one, maybe two discrete services hosted in the cloud. I haven't decided if I'm going to split out the AI provider and the AI wrapper. And yeah, I've heard of Thundercloud and stuff like that. I'm trying to avoid VS Code because I'm used to full on Visual Studio. Um, when I was first developing and I just had the Mac and I hadn't found this old Windows PC in a closet, um, VS Code is great. It's serviceable. It's incredibly useful, and millions of other developers can't be wrong except they're using JavaScript. Um, but I started on Visual Studio. It's been 20 years, and full Visual Studio has an awful lot of training wheels, and I am used to those training wheels and like the automations and just the integration with how .NET projects are structured and stuff is second to none. I've had people try to turn me on to JetBrains Rider, but $300 to kick its tires is a little much, and I don't even want to do like a trial of a new IDE. It's like throwing out your entire workshop and replacing it with new tools for just a trial run. I don't care for it. If somebody wants to pay me to get used to Rider, okay. But for myself, Visual Studio Community Edition running on Windows is fine. When I don't have access to Windows, VS Code is fine as well. Yeah, CLI is really, it's super weird to get used to the .NET CLI when you're so used to just right-click new project. Yeah, give me a Blazor project, or give me a this, or give me a that, and having to go drop down to the terminal when I'm in the zone and I'm like throwing stuff together. I don't want to have to drop down to the terminal pane to go .NET add, oh crap, what's the command, class, is it -n or is it --name, and how do I make sure it gets added appropriately? Oh yeah, that's right, -p project name, and type it all out exactly right and everything like that. It's just the cognitive load is bananas. I don't care for it. I just want to right click, add class, give it a name, go. So lots of conversational tangents and stuff like that today, but I don't mind. We made decent progress. We got the code in the manager done. We added that capability that we fleshed out in the manager to our API. And this API is really just sort of the canonical backend for our front end. And then this afternoon, when I come back at 1, I'm going to connect the front end to this. And we're going to try to bring back some townspeople. So as far as the actual things that I have to add to the code, before I do that, let's do this. Adds. My goodness, that's a lot of file changes. Adds filter townsperson capability to the TownfolkManager, the API Oh, I know why there's so many changes, because I changed the property and op result. Yeah, I Boy Scouted that. I shouldn't have. That was dumb. Altered the contracts on TownfolkManager, added the extension methods for mapping, updated TownfolkManager, renamed a few things up in NPC Access, but those are all relevant to what I'm doing. What changed on the row model? Oh, I bet it's where I added the name property. I just want to take a look real quick. Yeah, character name? Yeah, that's right. And mapping, accounting for it. And that's all she wrote. Okay. It's filter Townsperson capability of the TownfolkManager and the API renames op result dot result to op result dot payload, which feels much nicer to me as a developer. Renamed a couple of the filter related classes to more strongly associate them with their owner components. And here's Git. Here's Git. I just want to associate these with some work items. And yeah, Rev, even though this is a solo project and I'm not doing it for like a company, I'm trying to show all the stuff. So I'm going to associate that with work item 67 and work item 68. I'm not always a saint when it comes to this stuff, but I'm trying to maintain the habit for when I am working for somebody else. Again, I still remember how to do source control and associate changes with work items and so on and so forth. It's not just, well, yeah, it's muscle memory. It's good habits. And it's also part of the learning and teaching experience that I'm trying to do here. And I'm going to go ahead and push this up to the server because I have made some renames and some changes and stuff. And I want to make sure the build works. I've got some docs. I need to update them. As a matter of fact, and this is a public repo, Rev, if you're ever curious. Of course I have a readme.md, Rev. I've even got a requirements document. And if I go back, I've got an architecture document. And of course, that gives me a not found. I gotta fix that. It's just the link that's bad. Because if I go into doc and I go into architecture.md, here we go. This is all out of date. And I do need to fix all of this stuff up and create. I think I'm going to probably drop the console client before too much longer and replace it with the character workload API and the Blazor app. And I need to add the detailed design for NPC access, rule set access, the TownfolkManager, everything else. Dependencies, TownfolkManager. Oh yeah, look at that. If we add a web interface and decide to move logic into its own discrete service, we need to put a web API in front of it. For now, we'll keep things simple. And the character workloads project that I've got over here, or the workload provider, this is what I'm calling sort of my UI canonical API, and it's just a facade to everything in the background. Yeah, it's silly, and I've actually promoted you to VIP, so I should take a look at my permissions. See interface, I can access it from a web version. Yeah, you could go with gRPC. I find gRPC weird, man. It's like uh, somebody is trying to replace what we lost when Microsoft went cross-platform and dropped support for WCF, but they wrote it from the perspective of a JavaScript developer or something like that. Like, and not like somebody who's been developing in JavaScript for 20 years and hates it, but somebody who just graduated from boot camp and thinks JavaScript, if it were a person, would walk on water and, create bread and fish from scraps and save the world. Um, I've worked with JavaScript on and off again over my 20 years, and I use it as little as possible. Like the lack of strong typing and the flexibility is just a big box of rope that I frequently just get myself tangled up in and trip all over the place. And so yeah, this is the detailed design document for the dice library rev, and the format should look relatively familiar. And you can see all of this stuff. It returns a dice tray. You can click down to dice tray. Yeah. This is all markdown, so I can only get too fancy with the formatting. But this gives you a view into how this dice engine actually works. I've got the enum from Math Rock Kind, blah, blah, blah. Well, see, I'm doing this as sort of a service to the community. Yeah. If I tried to develop this or produce this level of documentation for a project for a company, the project manager would laugh at me. But then all of the other developers and every new hire that came in would absolutely love me. And the manager and the director would say, "How is our ramp up time so short now?" Like, I don't know. Maybe that investment I made in documentation has something to do with bringing somebody in the door and having them push their first commit in the first week or the first day. I don't know. So let's, just before I cut off, I wish I had a brain. Let's make sure okay, my CI build worked fine. So I'm a happy guy. I want to make a couple of notes. I should do this as an issue. Actually, no, I've already got this creative view. So I'll do it as a comment. Haha. In the Blazor project, add a client NPC filter class with nullable criteria properties. Add a client NPC role model class record. Add mapping methods in the /services namespace. Call the, what's it called? FilterTownsfolk. This is all just notes for myself for this afternoon. Call the FilterTownsfolk method on the UI's API. Turn the results to the page model. Create a component that can filter the townsfolk. Baby steps. 1. New component with text. 2. New add param to component. And these notes are for me because I've got a bad habit on the screen. I've got a bad habit of writing a whole lot of code. Oh, come on, Rob. Writing a whole lot of code that ain't gonna work. And then when I go to test it, I find out that I got to tear it all out, and I've wasted all that time. Okay. Call the get filtered NPCs method on init. Don't pass anything for the filter. Bring them all back. 4, excuse me, and call the add the filter UI use the cell vals to populate the filter class. 5, pass that to the, excuse me, service proxy call, make sure it works. Don't need to save, Rob. It's a web form comment. I'm going to start on those steps this afternoon. For now, I got to go give my head a shake, and I need to go and hit the store and stuff like that. I've had mixed success with Copilot in testing. I've completely disabled Codium in Visual Studio because Codium and Visual Studio's IntelliCode get in a fight and they try to render their advice over the top of each other, and it just looks messy. Um, when I've had access to GitHub Copilot in the past, either through the trial or through work giving me access, I've found that Copilot is an awful lot better at um, providing hint code when you are in the habit of writing out what the code needs to do as comments first, like you've seen me do a couple of times here. Like where I'll go step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, etc., etc. If you're trying to have really, really busy methods, it'll get confused. If you're trying to do really complex algorithms, it's going to step on your toes and get in your way. But I didn't do this with Copilot. I did this with ChatGPT connected to, or where it had ingested the 5e system reference document. I had it generate, like I told it, this is what the code I want you to create should look like. Go through the SRD PDF, and for each background in the system reference document, construct that pair of lines of code. And it did it. And I was able to just copy, paste, done. More fancy than that, I had it do this for each species in the SRD. But first what I did was I had it say, build me a table where each species is a row and each column is a numeric value for the average height, a numeric value for the average weight, the maximum age. Give me some hair colors, some hairstyles, some skin colors, and then generate this. And it chucked it all out for me. It was quite nice. It took some prompting, but it worked out quite well. I have had success with Copilot where I've asked it to write Gherkin syntax tests based off of its observations of an interface file. Now, the kicker is you do need to have your XML comments in place on each operation contract, on each interface method, and you want to describe you want to give descriptions for the parameters and all of that stuff. And if you have a solid XML comment on your interface methods, and let's see if I can find an example that I'm not embarrassed to show for that. Where the heck? Here it is. Here we go. So NPC JSON. I should, but I'm not gonna because I have a fresh commit here. But if you do this and you have like the param name and the param comment filled out and the returns filled out, it's actually kind of decent at generating the Gherkin scripts for each feature. And what I tend to do with BDD is and this is horribly behind the times. I tend to do one feature for each public method on a public interface. And then I implement these tests against the implementation of the interface itself. But I So let's say I've got the iTownsfolkManager. It's got a method on it called get NPC options. And eventually I'll have a lot more feature files in here. And Wreck and Roll is actually pretty darn good about mimicking what SpecFlow used to do, Rev. But the actual definitions, the test code itself, I end up writing. But as far as getting a good first draft, this is all backed by XUnit, Rev. As far as getting a good first draft of the actual test, the feature definitions, I've found that Copilot's actually not terrible at it. You do want to review and you do want to revise, but it's not bad at the repetitive grunt work. So yeah, so with SpecFlow, get NPC options, you write your tests like this, and then you right click and define them. I've already defined all of my steps. So I can come over to, let's say, here, we can go to the definition, and this is all XUnit and mock behind the scenes. Nothing earth-shattering, nothing like that. This is just a different way of approaching writing your unit tests. And traditionally, Gherkin will be used by QA folk that are creating test cases for front end or what's that API thing again? Oh, Postman, scripted Postman tests, etc., etc. I've taken BDD from being behavior-driven development all the way down to behavior-driven design in the past, and actually created these feature files first before or as I do my detailed design exercise, where I'm designing the contracts and the interfaces and all that stuff. Because going through this exercise where in plain language I'm discussing, okay, so when everything goes right, this is what should happen. But what about when this happens? And what about when this happens? How do we want our component to respond to suboptimal conditions? And that's what I've found BDD very, very useful for, is it gives us a way to discuss those unhappy paths with our less technical, with both our less technical people and our technical people. Because it gets the less technical people to go, oh, yeah, all right. So, yeah, you do have to call a database. And what if the database isn't up, or there's something wrong and we can't contact it, or whatever? What do we want the app to do when that happens? Because that is going to happen, right? It's like, hopefully not, but we have to behave like it will. And then the business folk go, okay, so when it can't get to the database, can we just have it kind of gracefully fail? I'm like, yes, absolutely, that's what we want to do. What does a graceful failure look like to you? What does a graceful failure look like to your users? And once you tell me what, me and my buddies over here will figure out how. And this is a really, really great way to have those discussions. And with the tooling like Wreck and Roll or SpecFlow or whatever, it's a really good bridge between non-technical folk and technical folk. And I've gone way over time, but that's cool. We've been having a great chat, Rev. I really appreciate the questions and comments and stuff like that. I've made some decent progress, but I do need to go do other things for a little bit. I'll be back here at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and we're going to add the list of NPCs in the database to my UI. Yeah, man, I love talking shop, and by you and I having these, well, it seems like a one-sided conversation. Um, Rev Fry just said in the chat he likes talking shop when someone gets it. Um, by you asking these questions or making these comments and me like over explaining my answer to you, that's because I dump all of this stuff over to video, and eventually I'm going to harvest shorts and stuff like that out of it. But our conversations are actually going to help people that come looking for technical knowledge. Just getting to eavesdrop on a couple of graybeards that have been doing this for a while, talking, trading war stories and stuff. So I appreciate it, and I'm sure my listeners do too. So I do need to run. Like I said, I'll be back at 1 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to find me on any of the internets, I have a link to my link tree. There's a link to all of the streams that I've done archived over on YouTube. You can get to my website, or if you're feeling generous, there's a link there where you can buy me a coffee if you're feeling like it. I will see all of you later on. I gotta run. Take care, folks.